Hi, sir. Welcome to the webinar. Can you hear? I'm not able to hear you. Sorry. Babita Garg, Miss Babita Garg. Sir, I would request you to turn off your video. We'll start. Only the speakers will be turning on their video. You can keep it in the listening mode. Good evening, everyone. Our esteemed participants and speakers. I'm Surbhi Singhal and extending a warm welcome on behalf of the International Council for Circular Economy. Today marks the commencement of the sixth session of our webinar series. The webinar series goes by the name Transforming India's Infrastructure, where we are privileged to have experts representing diverse industry sectors. This webinar series is designed to unite groundbreaking processes, ideas, solutions, and the widespread dissemination of knowledge. We are happy to conduct this series in collaboration with the PM Gati Shakti Center of Excellence in Logistics and Supply Chain Management, School of Management, Doon University. I would request all the participants, it's a gentle reminder to keep their microphones muted and utilize the chat box for any communication. In our previous webinar, we delved into the topic of circular economy and social responsibility, pondering on how we can ensure that all stakeholders reap the benefits of this model. Today, our focus shifts to the theme of creating a circular economy ecosystem. How can different sectors collaborate to facilitate the transition to a circular economy? Before we embark on our discussion, let me extend a warm welcome to our distinguished speakers and today's moderator. Our first speaker, Prateek Diwan, serves as the program manager at the Platform for Accelerating the Circular Economy PACE in Amsterdam, Netherlands. Prateek leads the programmatic development and stakeholder engagement for PACE's circular programs, specifically at the intersection of electronics, energy transition, and reverse logistics. His dedication lies in finding innovative and collaborative solutions to the challenges within the sustainable electronics sector. Next, we have Khushboo Garg, a senior analyst at the Center for Study of Science, Technology and Policy in Bengaluru. Khushboo has been actively contributing to initiatives in the circular economy since 2022, particularly in the PV and telecom space. Beyond her professional endeavors, she volunteers with the Germany-based NGO, The Considerate Consumer, contributing impactful articles that inspire sustainable choices. Our third speaker is Gurashish Singh Sahni, the co-founder and director of Recircle. Gurashish is passionate about creating a positive environmental and social impact through innovative waste management and recycling solutions. Over the past 8 years, he has led a dedicated team in diverting waste away from landfills and transforming it into valuable resources. Recircle under Gurashish's leadership provides a hassle-free scrap disposal services across India, recovering and processing recyclable materials while partnering with FMCG companies and plastic manufacturers to fulfill extended producer responsibility. Our fourth speaker of the day is Liz Suarez Visbal. Liz is an Ashoka Fellow social innovator, a system mover, and a doctoral research at Utrecht University. She has more than 18 years of professional experience in several countries, including the Netherlands, Spain, India, Canada, the US, Thailand, Mali, and Colombia as an NGO director and advocate of social impact with a gender lens. Her field of expertise is circular economy, system change, and social impacts in the textile sector. She has devoted her last 3.5 years of her doctoral research to finding evidence on social impact in the apparel value chain and how can companies and policymakers in the sector can reduce the asymmetry between social and environmental impacts toward a transition of improved working conditions and well-being of all workers and greater circularity practices in the sector. As we delve into this enlightening session, I'm delighted to pass the baton to our esteemed moderator, Dr. Sudhanshu Joshi, coordinator of the PM Gati Shakti Center of Excellence at the School of Management, Doon University. Before I hand over the reins, let me introduce Dr. Sudhanshu to you all. He's a PhD holder in supply chain management, certified Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, and Discipline Agile Scrum Master. Dr. Sudhanshu is also a visiting professor at the University of Technology, Sydney, Australia, with an impressive research portfolio encompassing sustainable supply chains, AI, circular economy, Industry 4.0 and 5.0, and more. Thank you, Dr. Sudhanshu, for your invaluable contributions. We now eagerly turn the virtual floor over to you.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, and welcome all the panelists. Thanks for being here with us. I hope my voice is clear to everybody. So,
hello.
Yeah, my voice is clear to you? Yeah. So Gurashish also has joined us. Yeah, that's really nice. The theme is
Hello.
actually...
I know. Hello.
Yeah, Gurashish.
Yeah, Gurashish.
Hello. Yeah, I'm going to try reconnecting. Can I do that?
No. Your voice is clear to us. Don't worry.
Okay. Oh, just hello. Hello.
Gurashish, we are able to hear you. If you want to rejoin, you can do that. The introduction has been done, and we are starting with the questions and answers. Are you ready for the first question? We were planning to have the first question for you. Are you ready for it? I think we have a network problem. Dr. Sudhanshu, you can go ahead with the other speakers.
Yeah, sure. So actually, the theme for today is creating circular economy ecosystem. And as we know that the ecosystem incorporate lot many of partners. Those are coming together in the form of collaboration. So we will today speak about through the question answer. We are stressing more on how the industry is coming up with a lot many of collaborative efforts, and especially the focus will be on the redesigning new processes when it comes to production activities and fostering the benefit of partnership across the businesses. So cross business collaborations we will also speak about through lot many questions that we have with us with our speakers, and also we'll wish to have a discussion on how the government plays an important role in shaping the policies for circular economy when it comes to transiting from linear to circular business models. So beside since we have lot many of 4 experts with us, and they are expert not in terms of their backgrounds, but also the kind of activities they're involved into. So as being asked for, let us have first question with Gurashish. And Gurashish being, a person with a great amount of, experience in the domain of circularity and being the co-founder of Recycle, I wish to start with him only. So, Gurashish, there is a question for you. Could you share your notable success that you had with Recycle's waste management solution and how the resource recovery and circular practices are being held by the organization uh, for itself, for the purpose of profit making, and also for the purpose of serving the community? So, wish to know some, some small, case experiences you had with.
Hello.
Yeah, yeah,
Hello.
yeah,
Thank
please.
you so much for that. Firstly, my sincere apologies. Actually, I was supposed to be on a flight and the from Delhi to Bombay, and it has been continuously getting delayed. And I'm at the airport, so put my yeah. Coming to your question, and circular economies.
I think there's some connection problem. Is anybody able to hear him? No.
Leave
Yeah.
disruption. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we can do is we can take the next question with the next question, I believe. And meantime, when Gurashish will rejoin us, we'll have the question for him. So we have Prateek, a young fellow, and Prateek who's taking care of the pace and highly promising,
Hello.
entrepreneur startup. Yeah, we will have question. Yeah, can we take the question with Prateek now, Gurashish? Because we are not able to, hear you properly. So
You are able to hear me properly.
no, we can't actually. Your voice was getting disrupted. Can you restate your answer? Gurashish, can you hear us?
That's okay, Dr. Sudhanshu. I
I think
think we
we
must
should
go
we should
ahead
take
with
Prateek's.
other speakers. Yeah.
That will be better actually. So by the next question, he will be. I think he will be in the position to get good signals to communicate with us. So Prateek is with us, and Prateek is with is associated with PACE. And Prateek, being a person with a lot many of intervention you have covered in such a young age, and your work experience shows that is a good blending of electronics, energy transition, and reverse logistics, of course. So now, considering all the things, all the experiences you had with variety of industries and domains which are fostering into the circularity. So now, when it comes to circularity being, a very new term and something which is coming up in the industry and the businesses also, how you think that how you can navigate and address those challenges when it comes to taking care of the linear, things into circularity, which is now the new way of doing business.
No, that's a good question, Sudhanshu. I think thanks for that. No, you're right. Circularity is such a new topic, but it's really not new as well. People informally in their neighborhoods, in markets, etc. They have been doing circular economy for a very long time, and it's really come to the private sector, to the corporates, to the lenses of the governments, etc. to do a lot more there. But yeah, I think the challenge is, typically if you really have to look at, not even challenges, I wouldn't really call them challenges. They're more opportunities. They're opportunities for growth for both businesses, for governments as well. And typically working in this, different sectors around the public sector, the private sector, I think three key buckets of initiatives are very important. I think the first one is innovation. How can you sort of build not only innovative platforms or products, but also business models. The second one being, what are the right kind of investments that need to come in to enable either the deployment of these innovation or even deployment of, other social lenses. And I think Liz can talk a little bit more about the livelihoods, the gender piece as well. And then there is obviously policy implementation. One follows the other. You think, you need to get innovation first, you need to get enough investments in, and then policy follows, or the other way around, right? The policy needs to be set for businesses to do, innovate for new business models as well. So I think there is quite a bit of opportunity, especially in electronics, in apparel, in the energy transition as well. And a lot of these are interconnected. These aren't silos. These aren't value chains that can work individually. So, the electronics sector just looks at what it's doing. The energy transition is doing its own thing. But it's really, it's the same sort of minerals, materials that all of these sectors need to work with. And how do you sort of have that collaborative pathway for all of these different businesses to come in and say, okay, this is a shared sort of a ecosystem that we need to work with. We can't do everything alone, just within our value chain itself, but there's a lot more collaboration that's needed. I think that's really where the opportunity is. And if you really look at electronics, the energy transition, reverse logistics, waste management, like Gurashish was saying, he's been very active there as well. I think collaboration and partnerships is the most, I think, the biggest enabler and lever for us to sort of go towards the way that we want to. And I think the other way is, how do you sort of take these different lenses of geopolitical considerations? How do you look at transition, which is equal, which is just? It's not a transition just for the global south or for the global north, but it's really, the transition across the globe. And how do you also look at right of ownership? Who needs to lead first? Who needs to follow? Who needs to enable sort of that thing? So I think all of those considerations addressed together rather in silos, I think that's really an opportunity for multiple sectors to come together, to work together. And you're seeing that in the energy transition, with the EV space. I think Khushboo can talk a little bit about the PV space as well. There is so much overlap that you really can't say, hey, you're an expert in electronics, you're an expert in PVs. It's really collaborative. And I think, as we go along the discussion as well, a lot of these thoughts would emerge out across all of our speakers.
Very right. So let us take the question to Khushboo, because as you said that she will take care of the solar PV being a domain she is working upon. And I believe, Prateek was saying that we have a lot of interventions which are coming up, and multiple industries are coming together for collaborative efforts. And in days to come, probably we will be able to create a kind of ecosystem among the industries, so that circularity come in a bigger picture and in real sense. So Khushboo, welcome. And there's a question for you. Can you please tell us something on the variety of challenges when it comes to creating recycling into the industry of solar power, solar PVs, especially the waste management of solar PVs? So what in your opinion, what sort of challenges the Indian PV waste management industry is facing, and the suggested strategies, of course, for the same?
Sure. Yes. Thank you for the question, Sudhanshu. So, we actually recently published a white paper and a policy brief on solar PV waste management. So I'll put forward some learnings from the same. And I would say, while the government has been, proactively engaging in formulating policies and guidelines in e-waste management and PV waste management, the crucial question is what more can be done? Where we can improve, right? What are the opportunities, like Prateek said? So, in my opinion, the ambiguity in PV waste guidelines, coupled with the predominance of informal market in recycling market, right? That is one of the key areas of improvement. And another notable challenge is the limited recycling and infrastructure, and the limited infrastructure for collection of waste solar panels. So to overcome all the challenges, in fact, there is no one approach. Definitely, a multifaceted approach is necessary here. So first and foremost, of course, clearly defining the responsibilities, licensing the informal market can really help us in ensuring that the waste is properly recycled. Then there is need for technological advancements to streamline the recycling process, make it more efficient, make sure the recovery rates are higher, right? Then increased funding for R&D. We need innovative solutions in the recycling space, right? And the most important is the collaboration between manufacturers and recyclers, which is I would say, the key to ensure success, right? And to ensure that we have a sustainable and an efficient recycling ecosystem. In fact, I would, like to take this opportunity to invite all of you to go through the comprehensive findings we have published in our white paper and policy brief. We delve deep into this landscape. It's available on the C-STEP website. So yes, thank you.
So we request you to please share the link also so that we can
Sure, yes.
after the webinar. Thank you so much. And we have with us Liz, Liz being, an expert in the domain, and Liz being a person who is actually doing research from Utrecht University. And Liz, can you tell us more on the social side of circularity? Specifically, taking some example from the industries like textile industry, where many of interventions are happening, where workers or the people which are on the social front of the circularity are well taken, and firms are able to sustain their business performance while shaking hand with the circularity in the domains.
Yes, thank you, Sharon, for the question. And apologies if you hear some background noises. There's some work around, but hopefully it will not disrupt so much. So yeah, I guess first it would be important to kind of contextualize a little bit what we mean, because there is different understanding of circular economy. There are there's a line of thought that says circular economy is only really aligned to environmental and economic gains, and that there is like another more a comprehensive notion of circularity as a pathway for sustainable development. And in that sense, we would want to see circular economy achieving both environmental, economic, and social components. However, the attention has been more into the environmental and the economic side, and we see a little bit of an asymmetry of the social part. So normally, the social dimension of circularity has been attributed as the numbers of jobs created, but we argue that it should not only be about the numbers of jobs created, but to ensuring that jobs are better jobs than linear jobs, meaning that jobs are creating really better livelihoods for workers and for communities. And then in that sense, we see practices that can be, and when we talk about also social impacts, and we really define social impacts at 3 levels. First, as quality of jobs, and also as workers and communities' well-being, and also in terms of gender equality and inclusion, which in the sector of the textile sector, as you are well aware, well, it's a highly feminized industry, and what we mean by a highly feminized industry is not only that there's a lot of women working in the industry or in the whole value chain, but also that the women end up being the holders of the most vulnerable positions as well. However, like what we see as positive examples happening are companies that have been able to really see at their performance more on a holistic level, so able to combine the social and the environmental compromises, and on a global level, a really good example could be Patagonia, which is known and for their environmental compromises. But also they're one of the first businesses who established a fair trade factory. And a fair trade factory is a very interesting concept because it aims at paying living wages to workers, and also incentivize as fair trade will work for products on a factory level. What it does is that it gives a premium per every product produced to workers that are working on that facility. And that allows workers to have a bit more of a set of where do they want that premium to go and help them into their livelihood in the way they want. So we see that as really inspiring way of moving forward. And I guess other examples, just to be more concrete, is really companies in which they also embrace their workers as not only as a resource to produce a product, but really as assets for the company, and then that they can see their workers as contributing also to the good involvement of the of the company.
Very right. I mean, Liz, when it comes to creating the ecosystem, like Liz was highlighting, and a circular ecosystem is something is an efforts that is coming from all the parties which are involved into the process of value chain. So the focus will be, as we all know, that the focus will be on the sustainability and ensuring that the business value should come out, resource should be optimally used, and the waste reduction can be carried out. So, Liz, considering this particular, understanding we have when it comes to a circular economy ecosystem, I wish to extend one more question to you. And the question is is more about, how the alignment of social and environmental impacts are affecting the apparel value chains. Being the expert into textile industry, I think you are the right person to ask this question for. And how the stakeholders come into the whole picture when it comes to the collaboration and reducing the economical, environmental, so-called, when it comes to waste reduction in the industry of apparels, how all these things are coming together, and with the commitment from the collaborative commitments in the industry.
Yeah, that's a very critical question, and I think for me, in order to really look into more on a systemic level, there's three things that we need to have in both, I think, in industry and in policies. First, a more systemic awareness. I think that the system thinking is something that is not present in the way in which we operate. We are more based on a linear model, trying to apply some system practice. Sorry? Oh, wait. But also, I think we need to think a little bit more also on interventions that are long-term thinking, and also the having these holistic approaches that combine the social and the environmental dimension. And when we look at a systemic level, we look at really at three main levels of interventions. We talk about policy and practices and resources that really should help to enable this transition. And now and here we see something as like the bonus malus incentives, in which there are some policies that reward good behavior, like in the implementation of circular strategies, or the creation of circular jobs, and then the regulations that are aimed more to punish the wrong behavior, and a little bit kind of how it is being aligned now within the new due diligence directive in the European Union, really trying to bring more these not really voluntary proposals, but really kind of enforce that really this holistic approach in the sustainability that addresses both the environmental and the social side, and bringing also like this positive, as I said, rewards for companies that are really taking steps forward. That I think it would be a first step. A second step would be to really nurture more deep thinking collaborations. And what I mean by deep thinking collaborations is not only strategic short-term one-time collaborations, but really like collaborations that really take a deeper understanding of where the problem lies, and really go for the long run. on it. And I think that those kinds of collaborations are still scarce in the system. And I think that there's a lot more that can be do, for instance, in terms of also mutualizing services for companies. Several companies in the sector face the same kind of barriers, and it would be good to see some sort of more collaboration at, identifying what are the common problems and geographically located, and somehow allow for the mutualization of these services. In that way, we were looking at an approach that is not only looking at environmental elements, but social as well. And lastly, I think we should look at elements that are more related to like the mindset, right? So like in system thinking, we work at these three levels: at the level of the structure, the policies, at the level of the relations, and at the level of the mindset. And I think our mindset is definitely both in terms of companies and consumers need to be changed, because I think there is an ambition for circularity, but on a day-to-day basis, we still are like breathing linear economy. So we really need to start establishing more interconnectedness of our daily life and the practice that we do, and to be able to really arrive into a situation in which circular becomes the new norm, and that we face linear as an old system. So I think that at those three levels, it's important to work systemically to be able to ensure that there is a holistic approach that is socially beneficial and environmentally beneficial for companies as well.
Thanks, Liz, for the insightful, view of yours. And thank you so much. And a question for Prateek now. Prateek, being a person who is witnessing the transformation into electronic industry particularly, and as we have witnessed that is an industry with the drastic, change and low product life cycles. So most of the interventions which are coming as a part of the innovations are coming through cross-sector collaborations. So can you take some examples to make our audience understand how the innovative efforts are coming across organizations, and cross-cultural collaborations are happening, particularly into electronic sector?
Sure, I think that's a good question. I think, and like I said, while there is the electronic sector, but the electronic sector is not its own silo, right? It still has so many effects on other value chains as well. But yeah, there are some of these innovative solutions that are coming in, and if you really look at, what currently the understanding is especially in emerging economies, is that circular economy equals waste management or recycling, right? And there are higher R strategies of reuse, repair, remanufacture that are often not spoken about, or are often not even in the sustainability reports or guidelines for a lot of these companies as well. So like you said, there are quite low life the electronics devices. However, there are business models that are coming along that sort of talk about putting new products in the market, but also compensating the old products when you buy new products. So, the whole business model around waste compensation is really picking up. I know for a fact that Vodafone is doing quite a bit of that in, especially in Africa as a geography, where while there is somebody buying a new phone, for example, in the global north, the consumers or the IT procurement managers pay a little bit more on the fee to compensate the collection and recycling of old devices that are already on the market. So there are business models where you could sort of talk about, nobody's asking you not to buy new products, but then you need to also compensate with the products that are already put on market, because there is quite a bit of resources over there. The other cross-collaborative example that I can think about is in the energy transition space, and it's a little bit linked to electronics as well, especially in EV batteries. So for example, there are initiatives where the procurement of batteries, electric batteries for school buses, is actually being funded by grid management companies. So there are two very different value chains, right? One is the school buses in a school district, And then there is the whole electronics grid. And why they're funding these batteries for school buses is essentially to say that once the state of health of a battery falls down to less than 80% or 70%, it needs to be replaced for buses. But the battery can still hold a lot of charge. It can still hold 80% of the charge. And that is then procured by the energy company itself for energy storage for renewable energy, right? So there are these collaborations that can really, keep reusing the same product across its life cycle. And at the end, once it's gone through its first life, its second life, probably third life as well, then there's a lot of activities happening around retrofit and really establishing, you just sort of work with the anode or the cathode of the battery itself, and you can give it a new life. And once it does reach waste management facilities, right? How do you then enable technologies? There's a lot of work happening at universities. There is so much research happening for material substitution as well, not using lithium anymore, going towards nickel. How can you sort of do that material substitution as well so that all the critical raw materials are not depleted in this race of energy transition very quickly? But then how do you sort of also make very forward-looking policy for how do you collect end-of-life products? How does that reach compliant recycling facilities? How do the secondary raw materials come out? How does that sort of go through the entire loop again for procurement by OEMs, a lot of them being electronic companies, but also the energy companies as well. So these are sort of, like Liz was saying, the systems level thinking. You just can't think in your own value chain. You think about what are the other effects that are happening that could sort of influence other sectors. But then, there is the whole financial the triple bottom line, like we talk about, right? The financial bottom line, the social bottom line, and the environment bottom line. How do you sort of take each of them into account? And it's really imperative for corporates to, have that 4A approach, the setting the ambition in, taking concrete actions, advocacy, have that advocacy for policymakers to also understand what's practically happening in the industry and what's possible. And then, of course, accountability. I think these 4 A's, some companies are doing well. Some companies are just talking about it and are not really doing it. So I think that's where, a lot of our work in seeking these collaborations across different value chains, across different corporates, across different public sector actors as well. I think that's crucial. And, electronics is a really good example. Plastics is a very good example as well. And so is apparel. And I think these value chains are really able to influence how other value chains can also take some best practices from there and really be proactive about what you need to do rather than being more reactive.
Yeah, well said. Great examples you have cited. Thank you. Thank you, Prateek. So let us continue the debate. And we have Khushboo with us. And Khushboo, as Prateek also stated, that the emphasis and the sandbox for any new experiments, especially when it comes to circularity and moving from linear economy to circular economy, emerging economies have become the major sandbox for the same. And countries like India, being highly diversified, kind of geography when it comes to the market, also it has high diversity in terms of the technology intervention, adoption of the technologies, and when it comes to circularity also, India is not excluded from any sort of new experiment. So we have 2 major industry. One industry Prateek has already covered. I have a question related to PV and the telecommunication sector. How a variety of circular economy interventions are being happened in the PV and the telecommunication sector, and what's your opinion on how you see the when it comes to the envisioned future of these 2 industry in terms of all the arts of circular economy? How you perceive, how are you seeing the future of these 2 industries?
Yeah. So, technology advancements, in my opinion, presents a dual aspect, like posing both as a challenge and an opportunity. So on one hand, we have shorter product life cycles, especially in the dynamic field like telecom sector, which is of course a challenge. And then there is, it provides a diversity in e-waste, which in turn demands a nuanced approach in handling that variety of electronic components. But it also provides an opportunity through technological innovations itself. So advanced recycling technologies can significantly improve our recovery rates, paving the way for sustainability. The integration of cutting-edge technologies such as AI and blockchain, it can also play a crucial role in ensuring supply chain transparency. Technology can help us monitor and report the waste produced, where the product is going. So like Prateek said, once it is at the end of its first life cycle, is it going towards the second life cycle? Is it getting reused? Is it getting disposed of? If it is getting disposed of, is it getting recovered? What's the recovery rates, and so on? So technology can help us monitor that and create reportings, right? And I would also say, so circular economy practices extend beyond waste handling, because strategic design considerations can inherently make a product more sustainable and eco-friendly, right? So I think adopting principles like design for environment, those can be really instrumental in scaling up the circular economy initiatives in fact all the sectors, right? Then it goes without saying that raising awareness and enhancing skills, is another crucial aspect, which involves, in fact, educating consumers, educating the stakeholders, and educating recyclers about the importance of circular economy practices and the necessary skills to implement that effectively and efficiently, right? So nothing happened in silos, right? As my panelists are also saying, you can't just look at one aspect. So collaboration between the stakeholders across the value chain, within the value chain, is the key strategy here, right? Because it helps in the formulation of effective and efficient end-of-life policies and strategies. Yeah, that's my view on it.
Thanks a lot. Very humble answer, and very, very, particular when it comes to, strategizing the transition. So now let us accelerate to the next question. Let us take a question from Liz. Liz, considering your, expertise when it comes to the cultural perspective of the transition from linear to circular economy, and in your experience, you have witnessed a lot many of, countries where cultural and, regional differences, of course, they are need to be considered during the transition process or adoption of circular economy practices. So based on your observation, based on your experience, we wish to know that how industry, particularly for instance, textile industry, how it is, behaving differently when it comes to adoption of circular policies or circular economy practices particularly. So how suppose a company which is into multiple industries, multiple countries, how they are taking care of the cultural difference when it comes to, deploying circularity country by country. So what is your, take on this question?
Yeah, thank you, Sudhanshu. And I think that this question is very pertinent from the perspective of both. We can look at from the consumer perspective and from the producer perspective. And our research focused a lot into the producer side. And what we find in the producer side is that in the textile industry, there tends to be like a reproduction of practices from a linear perspective. So meaning, for instance, we did a research in 3 countries, the Netherlands, Spain, and India. And one of the most clear similarities is the business model, that is really a model in which you try to work more towards centralizing production, meaning production are not is not made by the company but by third parties, and this is a behavior that has been adopted by the linear economy, and for big companies, but we see, for instance, startups in the three countries really adopting exactly the same model of production, you know. So even if it's a small business, they will not carry production themselves. They will go to third parties, and that what's interesting on that level is that on a behavioral level, we end up adopting practices without questioning whether the practice is a good practice. It's just because it has been done always that we keep on reproducing it, and we see that also happening both at the consumer side, you know, like that there is just, because it has always been done like that, then we will continue doing it, which for circularity it's a big problem, because it's very hard to change those mindsets of how you walk the talk, right? So that we've seen that as a big barrier, and in terms of like cultural corporate culture, you know, and behaviors at that level, at the production component. But in terms of the consumption component, you know, we see, for instance, that obviously countries like India, recycling and mending and has been almost part of the way of life of many in India, and you see that those practices are perhaps not so present in countries like Spain and or more northern countries, you know, which tend to really just think that, you know, products, once they arrive to the end of life, there's no point of fixing them, or also because it's more expensive, obviously, to do it, but it's also not in the mindset, you know. It's kind of like the average person will just like have something. If it's broken, then that's it. It's going to the donation that is going to be going somewhere, basically. So those perceptions as well affect how, you know, like also the perception that now here in the Netherlands, there's a lot of like circular strategies like resale and rental are taking a big hype, as well as we found that as a similarity in Spain and in India as well. But for instance, repair, there's also a big barrier that people say it is expensive. But now we're seeing a lot more of movement happening into the repair, and really trying to work into towards the, well, you know, if you think not that it's expensive, but it is enlarging the life of your product so you can keep it longer, then, you know, people, it's kind of like putting some accounting principles on it, you know. So like if you add it, put it there, then you kind of enlarge the life cycle, and then therefore you have more uses for it. That so you kind of invest on your clothes, you know, like, so if you see assets as clothes as your assets, then you invest on their good care, and then make sure. I think that's a good strategy to try to change and challenge our mind, you know, our kind of learned practices, that like this is the way that it has to work because it has always been, and challenging on that level. So we see, I would say, like those distinct cultural differences, but what I would say in the industry, we see a lot of similarities in terms of how production happens, and I think in that level there's a lot to learn from different experiences among countries, but also of understanding that the problems that we face are very similar in the sector, whether we're talking about the extraction or the manufacturing. We're talking about similar problems that are happening in the recycling scheme, and that there is lessons to be learned from experiences of different countries facing similar situations too.
So true. Yeah, you're right. So let us take our last question to Khushboo. I think we have a very connecting dots now. We are able to make some sort of interventions when it comes to coming up with the role of the government. Like Liz was focusing upon the role of the stakeholders, particularly the society. We have government, which plays a very, very important role, and particularly in shaping the policies and the regulations. And regulations for a country like India plays a very important role, because somehow this institutional pressure helps the companies to, flawlessly transit from one form into another form. And particularly when it comes to circular economy, uh, policies matters a lot. So I have a question with Khushboo now. In Khushboo, in your research experience, what sort of policy gaps, as the literature and your own, research says, and what sort of, improvements you feel that they are needed to be incorporated when the adoption is happening? Because now circular economy is becoming a reality, and a lot of, inter industrial, collaborations are about to happen and happening. So a lot of policies will be drafted, and a lot of regulators will be the watchdogs for implementing those policies. So what is, in your opinion, are the existing research, existing policy gaps, and how the government has the plans, or in your opinion, what could be the improvement plans that you can suggest, or we can, advocate to the government and the regulators? And the context will obviously
Yeah.
emerging economy, including India. Yeah, please.
Yeah. So, as I answered in my said in my previous answers as well, clear guidelines, right? Strategic engagements with stakeholders and academic institutions, and a proactive approach to embracing the technological advancements and the advantages it provides. It can help us in adoption of CE principles in a better way, in a more efficient way. So, like strengthening partnerships between government bodies and industries, stakeholders is very essential, because clear guidelines formulated through these collaborative efforts, between government and industry, this can provide a really clear roadmap to businesses in how they can align with the circular economy principles. Additionally, if you collaborate with academic institutions or think tanks, their research insights can foster a knowledge that can help you in refining and implementing circular economy policies. Like, it can give you targeted interventions. So if you look into, say, a detailed life cycle analysis of the entire supply chain, and you study the flow of materials, right? Through production, distribution, raw material sourcing, everything. So you can get clear insights into what the impact of the product is at each stage, and then you can make targeted interventions, optimize accordingly. And definitely technology advancements, as I've been stressing, are definitely pivotal in this journey. Cutting edge technologies like AI and blockchain can help us in waste management practices. It can enhance this transparency and the accountability, basically. And a design for environment. So as Liz also said, it might be expensive, but it is better because it increases the life of a product, right? It reduces the impact on environment, and it in fact balances out the cost. So yes, design for environment is another aspect. Licensing the informal market is very crucial. If you skill the informal recyclers and you license them, that can in fact regulate the whole recycling market, right? And creating awareness is the other way to look at it.
Right. Thanks, Khushboo. I mean, coming up with such a great, insightful, answer. Actually, when it comes to policy creation, considering these small and, important, perspectives are very, very, important.
Yes.
And yeah, very, very true. So one aspect could be, involvement of and the role of financial institutions. And as we know that the financial institutions, which are coming up as a bankers, or maybe the big, corporate houses, which are funding multiple, interventions, multiple startups, and the investors from the open market also, they are contributing and supporting businesses which are prioritizing their sustainability. And when it comes to circular economy, collaboration are coming up by infusing money into the circular economy businesses. So I think Prateek, we should ask this question to Prateek, because Prateek being a person with a startup also. So I have a question to you. I think you're the right person to ask this question from. Prateek, giving your background on multiple financial interventions that you wanted from the industry, and while being a person with a startup and venture capitalist, what in your advice would you offer to budding entrepreneurs when it comes to uh, intervening into sustainable ventures, which has something to add to the existing circular economy space in emerging markets, or maybe the countries with such a uh, restricted flow of or identified set of funders, where taking funds is a very legally it should be proof from any form of risk also, because in countries like India, financing one intervention requires a lot of rules and regulation to be followed. So what in your opinion, as a senior to the budding entrepreneurs, do you think that investing into sustainable or the nature of business, with those are very much into circularity and sustainability, what should be the points to be taken care of when you
No, I
start?
think that's yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. I think we can have a whole webinar around it. But I think the financial institutions themselves, I think really starting from there, I think there needs to be a little bit of a mind shift change over there, in the sense that they should not only be focusing on financing new green projects, but also sort of start focusing on how existing, um, you know, existing projects can become more greener, and helping in that transition itself is also key. I think when you think of development banks, when you think of other sort of credit lines that banks are giving for sustainable innovation, they're always looking for new green technologies coming in. I think the key aspect is also not to forget the existing infrastructure that needs to become green as well. And one classic example of that is just the EV market, right? All the investment at this point is going into battery manufacturing, is going into how do you make more efficient EVs, even from taking some of the consumer side aspects of, how can you make that, demand side measures as making it smaller, using less components, materials, etc. But unless and until you don't change the electricity grid and you don't make that greener, you will just have localized impacts, positive impacts, in cities, etc. But at the production plant level, it's still going to be, the electricity is still being made by fossil fuels. So it's really not helping in that green transition as well. So I think it's really from the financial point of view, I think there are banks that are doing good, when they're looking into financing new ventures as well. True value of creating a pair of jeans, right? It's just not the material cost. It is the cost on livelihoods. It's the cost of, the impact on biodiversity, on nature. So if you really look at the true cost of a pair of jeans, it's not $30, but it is going to be a lot more, especially in emerging economies. So that's from the financial point of view, right? The financial institutions, what they need to do. Of course, they need to also increase their risk appetite. A lot of venture capital or a lot of banks are really looking for an ROI, but an ROI just on the financial part of it is not enough. There is ROI on the social impact, there is ROI on the environmental impact, and there are new frameworks that are coming in to measure that ROI as well. And I think that's something that financial institutions need to embrace as well. Coming on to the more innovation startup side, I think there is a lot of opportunity within circular economy. I think, right from building platforms, right from using technologies like digital twins, for looking at the efficiency of assets, infrastructure assets. How can you sort of look at predictive maintenance so that the life of that asset increases? You can also look at, there's a lot of work happening around digital passports, product passports, where you're looking at the traceability of each component at a product level, but also at a material level. One advice I think that startups really need to, think about a lot more is really partnerships and collaboration. I think building that partnership in the ecosystem really is a key lever. Like I said before, to get your product out of labs or out of, institutions to the market itself. And there is a lot of opportunity there. Policymakers, are actively working with businesses, with research institutions to really look at their policy, how to shape their policy as well. And I think in our last question, we were talking about a little bit of policy. And, businesses and startups, there's a good example in Kenya, through the Kenya Private Sector Alliance on plastics. And there is a lot of work that happened in the innovation space with the private companies, private sector companies as well, to really, based on their innovation, what they could see, how plastics can be reduced in packaging. There was a whole policy that was made around it. So, startups can really influence a lot of things. They can not only influence how their growth happens, but also the effects on social impact, the social impact itself, the environmental impact itself, on policy making itself, and having that whole ecosystem creation. I think that's where startups, other outside of climate tech startups as well, can thrive. But I think especially for climate tech startups, I think there are a lot more grants, a lot more funding opportunities that are coming in. I know at the regional level as well in India, there are a couple of funds that are looking for climate tech startups. There are climate accelerators as well. So I think it's really tapping into the right kind of people, the right kind of network, which is really important for this sector. And of course, financial institutions will follow up once they see that shift in trend through startups.
So true. So the angle is not only the brown fields. We have the examples from the green fields also, like Prateek said. Yeah. So the whole circular economy ecosystem is witnessing and is about to witness lot many of startups also, lot many of interventions by young startups, starters like Prateek, and lot of future budding entrepreneurs also. And now let us see the research and the academic perspective, since we have two very noted researchers with us, Liz and Khushboo. So I have a common question to both of you, and I wish to take Liz to take the question first. And the question is more about how the academic research and industrial research, particularly the practical implementation of such academic research, is happening in the domain of circularity and sustainability, and how the missing link, which was always there since the starting of academic world in India particularly, it was missing it was a missing link between the industry and the policymakers and the academia. How this opportunity of writing research in circular economy is able to connect these three dots: the industry, the policymakers, and the academia. So what is your opinion as a researcher? What sort of progress you have witnessed, and how you see it, the future of research in the area of sustainability and circular economy? So I wish to request Liz to take this question first, and followed by Khushboo.
Thank you, Sudhabu. Yes, that's very critical, because I think that for the longest time, research has been kind of siloed as well, and when there is a lot of good use of fundamental research as much as applied research, but I think that research has been traditionally be seen as an output of knowledge, and I think that there is a lot more that needs to be done in terms of co-production of knowledge. So you need to really take also a systemic approach in education and in research, in which you see stakeholders not as subjects of research, but as co-producers of knowledge as well. And I think in terms of circularity, and that's what I meant before by walking the talk, I think that in our minds is clear what circular economy means, or we want it to mean, but on the practical level, it's very hard to make that connection. And I think a lot more has to happen in terms of experimentation, of business experimentation that is like supported with academia and research that create some sort of a safe space for companies to be able to try, like that's the first step, try to implement that and then see what happens and then reiterate, and that is not seen also as a cost only in the company, but it is also seen as something that can be taken forward. And we need those examples of proving that things do work at that level, and bringing that like blueprint to other companies to start doing the same. I think that there is a lot more collaboration on the academic level that needs to happen too, and also, as I say, likewise policymakers, here in Utrecht, we're having really interesting concept of futuring, which is really working with policymakers and working with their real problems that they need to actually have to address with researchers and with citizens as well. So you take research also like as a forum in which these real challenges are addressed and that are iterated as a lab. So I think that that's the future of for me, where I aim research to go is really into a place in which this is more iterative and that is more really helping companies and society to canalize this into how to relearn what we need to forget, and how to forget what we've been learning wrong, let's put it that way, and how to relearn what we need to be able to see circular economy as not as an ambition, but more as a practice, as a day-to-day practice.
Interesting. So learning, relearning, and right, further it is a kind of a process. De-learning, relearning, and de-learning again. So right. So thank you, Liz. And the same question goes to Khushboo also, being a practicing researcher. You are involved in a lot many white papers writing also. And so what is your opinion that how and these 3 points can be connected when it comes to policy makers, industry, and academia? How this opportunity of writing into sustainability and collaborative circular economy will be able to bridge this gap, which is a very, very century old. I would call it since we got independence, Indian universities and education system is not able to bridge that gap. So, what's your opinion on this?
So I think evidence-based research, which is what we do at C-STEP, evidence-based research and data-driven insights can really help in optimizing the circular economy frameworks. And the 3 dots that you're talking about, stakeholders, government, and academic institutes, they definitely have to work together to come to a solution. No one body can just change the whole landscape itself, right? And what helps them collaborate is the evidence-based research. When you know the facts, when you know what needs to be done, what needs to be improved, where the improvements are required, you can collaborate more on that, and you can optimize your frameworks based on the research results. So as I in fact said before also, say research on with the help of LCA, a detailed LCA analysis across the supply chain. That is where you look at all the unit processes and you see the impact of each product at each stage. That gives you insights into where most of the impact is happening, right? What is happening after distribution? What is happening when the product is getting transported? How much impact is there after end of life, and so on. So that then you can build strategies based on the research analysis. And I think now this is starting to happen. I would say the government, the industry, the academic institutes, they are collaborating now. It's not I would say that far-fetched. They have started to recognize the importance of research, and they've started to bridge that gap. And in fact, I would say I would like to bring one more crucial stakeholder into this, that is consumer. Even the consumers are more curious now. They are starting to ask questions. So research helps you create that awareness as well, the general awareness. So consumers also know the impact of their choices. And when they realize the impact of their choices, it helps them in better decision making. Like they can choose products which are more sustainable. A very simple example, if I want a product online, right? And if I see the store is actually 2 kilometers away, okay, and I know the impact of me going to the store and coming back, that transport impact is less than actually ordering online and getting it shipped. So I can just go and take that product from the store. That happens when you have awareness, right? And I think research enables that awareness. Then you have research in technology advancements. So today, like you have these simulation models, right, where you can just see the different industrial processes and under different scenarios. You can calculate their impacts in all the scenarios. You can see what are the requirements, where my impact is going higher, where it is going lower, and then you can choose the most sustainable process before actually implementing it. That is a technology level research. So yes, this research goes hand in hand. It's not something different among the like you can't say that these stakeholders are one side and research is on another side. It's actually a collaborative effort. Yes, and research aids you in developing, optimizing, implementing the circular economy frameworks.
So valid point, yes. So as you suggested that evidence-based research could be a solution to the problem. And instead of talking about, three perspectives, we must have, uh, research from the viewpoint of the customers also, right? Because they're the end beneficiaries. So let us take this, Khushboo, one more question to you actually, which is more pertaining to the domain you belong, and how you see that this data-driven insights through research, through a lot many of research that you are carrying out with your parent organization, is helping the PV and the telecommunication industry to cope the challenges of transition from linear to circular economy. So some insights you would like to share with us?
Sure, yes. So, actually one of our key interventions in the policy brief and white paper that I talked about earlier, and I'll put the links in the chat. So one of the key interventions was monitoring and reporting framework. Implementing that framework to track the PV installations. Okay, what is happening to PV waste, how much waste is getting generated, how much out of it is getting recycled, reused, and how much material is getting recovered. Those kind of tracking and reporting mechanism is of course the necessity. And it not only helps you in understanding the current scenario, but it also helps in maintaining a comprehensive database of producers and recyclers. So that data, it can help producers and the recyclers, manufacturers, everybody make better decisions. So yes, as this was our one of the key interventions, and which can help the PV space immensely. And again, I would say, please go into detail. Like we have discussed it in our white paper and policy brief. Please give it a thorough read.
Sure,
And
sure.
I'll put the links. Yeah.
Surely, thank you. Thanks. Do share the links with us. And now let us revolve the question to Prateek, a young, entrepreneur and a great, when it comes to the questions, he is having great examples to quote. So Prateek, now the question is with you. And the question is more related to, how we can, convert the strategies and the action plan into fruitful outcomes. So a lot of industries are, engaged into doing research at their levels. I mean, in association with other industries, or maybe the industry leaders, or maybe the consulting agencies, or maybe the universities around. And a lot of, fruitful solutions are also coming, like the Mark Arthur Foundation's, framework, which is recently being deployed by majority of universities in Europe and UK. And India is also, testing the MacArthur in the context to Indian, because we have a different, ball game altogether.
Right.
So, what is your opinion that how stakeholders' engagement into research? Because by and large, industry can only understand and deploy things when they will be, fine tested, multiple time it is being tested. So let us take, stakeholder at the center and how the stakeholder oriented research is when it comes to driving circular economy initiatives, in your opinion, is important. And how you help uh, in case suppose I've asked you that how a roadmap can be created so that multiple critical issues can be highlighted, identified from the viewpoint of the stakeholders. So your opinion on the same?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, and I think a lot of private company, just corporates or the private sector is actually collaborating quite a bit with research institutes, with universities, with NGOs, NGOs like WRI or CSTEP, for example. I think the way to do that, the way it should be done as well is because a lot of the practical data lies within the value chain of the private sector itself. So even if they're looking into waste management, into extracting secondary raw materials, if they're looking into scoping down their scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, there's a lot of research that it's still quite scarce, but how can companies also influence their scope 3 emissions, for example, right? A lot of that insight and a lot of that data actually lies within the corporate sector itself. And one of the ways that the private sector is actually open to collaborating is through non-competitive coalitions. And a lot of these non-competitive business coalitions have come up. If you look at the We Mean Business Coalition, if you look at the RE100 coalition that has more than 100 companies in the EV space coming together and looking at interventions at a more ecosystem level, they're really bringing in their insights. They're really bringing in what they're doing at a company level, what they're doing with their suppliers, what are they doing within the supply chain itself. And that could be applicable to the larger ecosystem and really building those sort of initiatives regionally. I think that's happening quite a bit. Another coalition that I can think of is the RE100 coalition as well, where the transition to renewable energy across emerging economies is quite a big thing, and more than 100 companies have come in, 100 companies, but also NGOs, research institutions have come together to say, okay, what can we do at a regional level, at a sub-regional level, at a city level, at a municipal level, for example. And a lot of that data for research really, even if like researchers like, Khushboo or, even at WRI, because WRI does quite a bit of evidence-based research as well. If you ask them to get that data is just not publicly available. You can work with the UN agencies as well, with UNITAR, with a couple of their knowledge bodies. While they have more data than most, a lot of the data actually is with the corporate sector, and getting them involved in newer interventions and new business models, I think is very crucial. And there are quite a bit of examples, like I mentioned, and I think those coalitions are going to grow as this transition happens. And I think Liz also talked about the systems level thinking. Systems level thinking can only happen when you build the right kind of relationships, the right kind of levers. And the corporate sector is one of because they don't have to go through the typical bureaucratic process. They can innovate a lot more faster. They can experiment and fail, and that's all right. They learn quite a bit from that. It's not like the government sector, right? The public sector needs to be a lot more careful with policy interventions, with what they do, even for their procurement, etc. So yeah, I think really what pushes the envelope is the private sector, and the envelope itself is the public sector that needs to keep growing. And all of what the knowledge, the interventions, the policies, and the way forward is actually the letter in the envelope itself. So yeah, I would say that's essentially how I think that transition is going to be fruitful. The transition is going to happen. We are going to be okay in the next 20 to 30 years. But I think it's really the participation of all of these different members that need to come
Very true,
together
very true.
right now.
And I believe that, like you have said, that most of the things are not being, shared to the public domain. And the solution could be, public repositories should be maintained when it comes to data which is coming from the research family.
Exactly. And that's what the compliance reports are also asking companies to do as well. If you look at the CDP project, you look at the other compliances around climate disclosures, etc.
Yeah.
A lot of the data is actually coming through that.
Actually coming
So
in, yeah. And same actually in the health sector primarily, the things are very shareable, public repositories are maintained. So I have a last question to you actually, because the questions related to research we have already discussed with Liz and Khushboo. And the question is related to the digital technologies, of course.
mhm.
And being a person who is into to the triangulation, stage, who is taking care of the circularity and particularly in the electronics and reverse logistic domain, how you think that digital technologies are playing a critical role? How this inability of adding processes with digital technologies are helping industries, especially when it comes to the waste, recycling through circular activities, especially the reverse logistic and closed loop solutions.
Yeah. And I think that that's a good question. And that's also a lot of what at least the European Union is looking at. The European Commission is looking at digitalizing a lot of the policy asks themselves. So one example in reverse logistics is how do you get the approval and notification process of e-waste movement digitalized? So at this point, a lot of the notifications for e-waste shipments that go from one member state to the other in the EU is still very paper-based. And what really happens is a lot of the information is lost in translation because not everybody does it in the same language. Not everybody sort of implements the Basel Convention in the same way, right? If you're an origin and a destination country, you implement it in a very different way. If you are a transit country, there's a lot more risk averseness. So how do you sort of use technology to bypass some of these challenges? And that's what, a platform-based approach is crucial. And I think the European Commission, along with some NGOs, with their own knowledge partners, are building this platform that they want to roll out initially in Europe, but also make it available for, the emerging economies, for the global South to also adopt, where there is a lot more transparency around how e-waste needs to move within the legal boundary and the framework that the Basel Convention has put in. So yeah, that's one of the key examples that I can think about digitalization. Having that platform first approach. I talked about a little bit of the digital product passport as well to build in transparency for materials and products and their movement. So I think technology is really, I wouldn't say it's an enabler. I would call technology as an enabler, but it's really the people who are working with these technologies are going to be the most important stakeholders in this conversation as well.
So right. Thanks, Pradeep. And with this, discussion that we are able to understand that transition is not a matter of just an approach, but it's a matter of coming up with a great intention and commitment also. And it requires a lot many of efforts, a lot of interventions are required, a lot of serious policy creations are required when it comes to the role of government and the regulators. And also the commitment should come from the private parties also. Research institutions has their own role to play here. Like the lady was sharing her white paper with us. So similarly, lot many of studies to be carried out so that the readiness can be checked. A lot of evidence-based research is required. A lot of public repository is required to be maintained, so that there will be no stone unturned when it comes to transition from one stage to another stage. So we are so glad and thankful to our panelists today, and Prateek, Khushboo, and Liz. They made a great, understanding about the subject to all of the audience we have today. And we are also grateful to Mr. Gurashish for his attempt to join us, although he was traveling, so it was a bit difficult. And now I request and big thanks to all of you. Thank you so much. And now I invite Surbhi to give the word of thanks to our experts and the audience. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dr. Sudhanshu, for moderating this session so seamlessly. And thanks all of the speakers. And it was definitely an insightful session that we just experienced. And thanks for your valuable contributions, Prateek, Khushboo, and Liz. Your perspectives have truly illuminated our understanding. And I have already mentioned a special appreciation for Dr. Sudhanshu that we want to give. He is always available on all webinars, and he does it seamlessly. Thanks, Dr. Sudhanshu, for this. And now we'll be meeting you after 3 weeks. We hold these webinars in every 3 weeks, and heartfelt gratitude to our engaged and wonderful audience as well. They have been very patient, and if you have any lingering questions or queries, please feel free to reach out to me at surbhi@icce.com, and the email address is conveniently provided in the chat box. And if you have, please subscribe to our newsletter also. The link will be there in the chat box as well. And we are looking ahead for our next focal point of discussion. Our next focal point of discussion will be the role of policy and regulation in driving a circular economy. What policies can be put in place to incentivize circularity? That will be our next discussion. And save the date for the upcoming webinar on December 22nd, another Friday. Stay connected with us subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you once again for your active participation, and we look forward to engaging with you in our future sessions. You can find the recordings of all our webinars on our YouTube channel also. You will find the link in the chat box for all the previous webinars on our YouTube channel. There is the circular chat series that is also going on, parallelly. So you can go ahead and see the circular chat sessions which are happening on waste from electronics and electrical equipment. So please go ahead and do check our YouTube channel and spread as much as you can those videos to spread awareness for circularity and the circularity related topics. Thanks everyone once again to the speakers and the moderator and the audience. Thanks a lot for your time today.
Thanks, Ruby. Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank
to the
you.
entire
Thank you.
team.
Have a good day.
Thank you, Surbhi. Thank you, Prateek. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Khushboo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.